I think DC very, very much on the hot seat right now. We shall see what happens as soon as Monday tomorrow. Elko was pissed, man. Elko was pissed. You hear him after in the presser. I mean, he said he doesn't want to. He'll never see the defense play that way again. All right, we've had a couple days to sit on that bowl game, the collapse, the promising stuff we saw offensively, only to be dwindled away by a lack of toughness down the stretch defensively and the inability to respond to the swings of the game as a team, but more so on the defensive side of the football. Where do we go from here? A lot of the players you saw in that bowl game are going to be mainstays of the team come next season. You've gotten pretty much half of your portal work done. You did the offensive side of the ball. You're feeling really good about adding Concepcion, Craver, and Hudson. You feel good about adding tight ends. You feel good about what you bring back there. But defensively, a lot of question marks. A lot of head scratching. A lot of uneasiness. Weird feelings on this defensive side of the ball, man. And it's surprising considering what Mike Elko is known for. Great DC, great defensive mind, defensive-minded head coach. Where do we go from here? Guys, thanks for being here. Like and subscribe. We're going to get right into it. Just kind of go through the game a little bit, but really talk about the path forward because 2025 going to be a very, very tough schedule, and you're going to have to be at your absolute best to navigate that thing and hopefully not repeat the 8-4 record once again. So thanks for being here. So defensively, you started that game pretty damn well. 3 great drives. They had like 15 yards to their first 3 possessions. Then you have that Noah Thomas drop. Momentum flips, and from the rest of the game, the defense became pretty damn porous. You got pushed around. Interior D-line. You ran Regis pretty much the whole game. You rotated Rodas Johnson and DJ Hicks in that other spot for most of the game, and it was clearly not enough. And we all know that the needs in the portal are circled around that defensive line right now. So to me, that aspect of the game was not that surprising, even though it felt terrible. I think somewhat could be explained or expected based on just your lack of rotation, your lack of freshness in that position group, and just the fact that DJ Hicks is still a young guy working into a role. He's going to have a huge role next year. His development, his offseason with Tommy Moffitt, same with Regis. That stuff's going to be critical going into next year because they're both your starters next year. But in the portal, you're looking for that rotation there because they can't just be the guys you lean on an entire game, and rarely can a defensive tackle or defensive lineman just be the guy a whole game like we asked Regis to do that game. So that happened. Again, USC dwindled in numbers, opt-outs, portal entries. A&M was too, and we felt that in defensive line quite a bit in the game. The linebacker fits, the linebacker toughness, the linebacker tackling in the game, in the running game, was very concerning to me. That was probably the biggest surprise and kind of the glaring issue to me watching that game. Because, yeah, you didn't have Scooby Williams, but you had Torian York. Damian Sanford's played a lot of football. Solomon DeShields a veteran. I felt like you could have gotten more out of the linebacker crew in this game. And just to see them kind of collapse after that sudden change interception in tackling and kind of bottling up those runs when they got past the first level, that didn't feel good. DBs were a mess. Dez Ricks closed the game out. I mean, you saw it. Targeted 3 times in a row to close that game. And, yeah, man, I mean, a lot of questions about Dez Ricks right now. I understand them. I get it. I'm gonna, kind of try to talk you off that Dez Ricks cliff just a little bit. I know a lot of people just want to see him replaced. Keep in mind that is a freshman age player. He was thrust into a lead defensive back role in this game because of Will Lee sitting the game out precautionarily for next season, deciding to come back another year, which is huge for this team. Definitely our leader in that unit. And Dez Ricks had a big role against Lincoln Riley, and Lincoln Riley still had his best receiver, number 6, and that was Dez Ricks' assignment, and boy, did he get burned doing it. You took some lumps with Dez Ricks this year, man. You really did. But nature of starting a true freshman defensive back in a year 1 in a system, you were always going to see lumps, and they were definitely amplified in the bowl game. Now, I'm not here to suggest that Dez Ricks is this superstar of the future. I'm not saying that he is clearly the answer right now. I'm not saying he should even clearly be the starter of day 1 next year. But you got to look at the upside there. There's a reason that everybody in the country wanted the guy coming out of high school. There's a reason he was a 5-star. There's a reason Alabama recruited him. There's a reason A&M got him on campus and trusted him in that starting role as a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman, but he's a true freshman's age. He's an early enrollee. I am willing to give Dez Ricks a year of development and to give him a chance to earn that starting role once again next year. Because he got Will Lee back. He's going to cover the wide receiver one. He's going to have the toughest assignment on the field typically. You get Tyreek Chappelle back, most likely, starting at the nickel spot. And that's going to take a lot of pressure off of Dez Ricks. And I know Dez Ricks' negative plays definitely amplified this year. Definitely saw it versus Auburn. One of the best receiver cores in the conference, by the way. And against Lincoln Riley as the lead guy. His 2 worst games of the year. And you're not going to notice his positive plays because that's just the nature of the defensive back position. You don't notice them, they're probably doing pretty well. Well, we noticed Dez Ricks a bit this year. I'm not giving up on the guy. I'm not here to say, okay, we're bailing on this project. We're bailing on this prospect. No. You got to get another year under your belt. He did that. You got to get another offseason under Tommy Moffitt under your belt. He will do that. And Mike Elko has talked about how DBs typically take a year in his system to really get into the flow of it and understand when and where they're supposed to be. So we're not giving up on Dez Ricks. You might. I'm okay with you saying that. I get it. It was a rough showing. Let's talk about the DB unit as a whole going forward. Obviously, big regression from the safety unit down the stretch of the year. I think Will Lee was the most consistent force, maybe on the entire defense for the whole year. I mean, he had tough assignment after tough assignment, and he played admirably in pretty much every game. Got beat his share of times, and that's going to happen when you're playing good on good. But he's back. I am willing to circle Dalton Brooks and continue moving forward with him as a go-to starter next year. This was his first year, full-time starter, and most consistent player in that safety unit, and it wasn't great. It wasn't all perfect, but he was the most consistent player out there. The Bryce Anderson regression was definitely a surprise this year. I don't think it would be a surprise to see some of the regression being that he moved from nickel back to safety, but to the level that it did go, that was concerning. That will be concerning ongoing, and it will be a factor in deciding what happens to this defense going forward. Marcus Radcliffe's there, another young guy, 1 year of college under his belt at San Diego State before, thrust into a starting role this year early in the season. He won that role over Bryce Anderson in camp, had some good moments early in the year. We saw him take his share of lumps down the stretch of the year. And then you have youngsters, Miles Davis. Obviously, Trey Jones is gone, out of eligibility. Miles Davis has shown tremendous promise every time he's seen the field, which has been very limited in mop-up duty usually. But he looks like a piece that you could probably chalk into the future of this secondary unit. So right now, without allocating any spots to potential portal additions, your next year starters would be Dez Ricks, Will Lee, Tyreek Chappelle, Dalton Brooks, Marcus Radcliffe. Now, as of right now, I am fully comfortable with Brooks and Lee and Chappelle as 3 surefire starters next year. So that leaves 2 positions to compete, to add portal players, just to find the best, to let the cream rise to the top, and to add another year of development for the guys that are already in the program. I would suggest that unless some superstar safety pops up in the portal and he's looking A&M's way and A&M's looking his way, that you have enough talent in the room with another offseason under Tommy Moffitt, another year of learning the playbook, learning their responsibilities under Elko. We'll talk about the DC in a second. That you potentially have the answers for that unit within now. And I know that's not what we want to hear coming off of the game we just saw, coming off the season we just saw. But these guys fell short of their capabilities this year. Same for the defensive line. And I think a lot of that falls on the DC. On the defensive coaching staff as a whole, I am overall disappointed with the defensive production on the year so far. And it really starts with the defensive line. Yes, we had some high highs from Scorton. We had a couple of high highs from Stewart. We had a couple of highs from Turner. But as a consistent force, the consistency was not there with the D-line this year. And that was supposed to be the unit we hung our hat on and made our money with in the 2024 season. Didn't happen. And I think that is a reason for a lot of A&M shortcomings this year. A lot of it was schematic, but some of it was just tackling. Think about the South Carolina game. Tackling in that game, responsible for 14, 21 points, major swings in the game. The opening drive, having quarterbacks, wrapped up and letting them go. The game versus Texas, letting Quinn Ewers get out of the backfield. I mean, if you're talking personnel and you look at this D-line, you know the pieces were there, and you know you came up short with those pieces. I would run that unit back. I wouldn't throw out an opportunity to have Scorton, Turner, and Stewart as three of your guys at the D-line. I think the staff fell short with the unit they had this year, and I think that goes for the secondary as well. So all that to say, I'm not throwing pieces out just because, we got what we got this year. That was a young DB unit. It was a relatively young linebacker unit. I know Scooby's an upperclassman, but it was his first year in the program. York, a sophomore, was playing next to now NFL star Edgerrin Cooper last year. I'm willing to give a lot of these defensive pieces a go again. And I think Cassius Howell, prime superstar breakout candidate next year. Like, I know I'm using big words here, and this is kind of hyperbole, but I think that Cassius Howell has a path to be an elite edge rusher next year. Portal targets, strong side defensive end. You got to start one. You got to find a starting caliber strong side defensive end. Solomon Williams showed some good stuff in the bowl game, but as a starter, I think you want to find a ready-made veteran strong side defensive end. You got to find at least 2 D tackles to fill into your rotation. And then I'm good with your starters at D-line. But really, the discussion about this defense, I think, is around the defensive coordinator position, because that's the guy that sets the tone, sets the roadmap, sets the expectations for their coaches. Is Jay Bateman the guy? Do you want to cut ties with the guy after year one? I think there's an argument to do it. And I'm not here to call for heads. That's why I'm not fully leaning into the fire Jay Bateman thing. I don't want to use my platform to do that. But as far as just getting the most out of players, you just didn't do it defensively this year, man. I just don't see why the group we had this year was as deficient, should be as deficient as it was. And I think that falls on coaching, man. And I think from day one, when we looked at the coaching acquisitions of this team last, coaching turnover when Elko was building his group, I think we were happy with every group. And the one that everyone had a question mark was, okay, Jay Bateman, position coach from Florida, doesn't have a recent track record of success really at the DC level. I think that was always kind of the one that we kind of left a note on, saying, okay, we're going to circle back and see the results here. And the results are in. Disappointing year by the defense that I thought could be an elite upper echelon unit this year from top to bottom, and it just wasn't. So, yeah. I think more so than saying, okay, Dez Ricks, you're done. We got to find new safeties. We got to fire this player, this player, this player. I think you got to look at the man at the top, man. I think DC very, very much on the hot seat right now. We shall see what happens as soon as Monday tomorrow. Elko was pissed, man. Elko was pissed. You hear him in the presser? I mean, he said he doesn't want to. He'll never see the defense play that way again. What's the easiest answer there? What's the quickest fix to kind of permeate the entire team more so than firing players? Finding a new head man. So it's on the table, guys. Again, I don't want to use my platform to say fire this guy, fire that guy. That's not what I'm here to do. But that might be the best option, the best path going forward. So I think we covered defense. Got to find those guys in the portal. Let's flip over to offense. Give me your thoughts, defense. Give me your thoughts there. I know a lot of y'all are very low on Dez Ricks. That's a big question mark. Could you move Terry Bussey over there, and is that an automatic upgrade? I don't know if it is after a year of developing offensively, but if it is, you make the move. You make the move. I think the coaches will know better there. Bussey showed some good stuff down the stretch offensively, and I think the offense as a whole, outside of short yardage play selection, I think we saw improvement there. And I am on board with Colin Klein right now. I know a lot of y'all aren't, and that's okay. I understand it. The short yardage stuff just really rings strongly in our minds right now, especially versus Texas. Let's talk about the offense in the game real quick. I got what I needed from Reed. I saw what I wanted to see. We heard him talk about his issues as a player in the presser a couple of weeks ago, saying he just needs to take what's there, have better pocket presence, have a better pocket clock, have a better pocket feel. And I think we absolutely saw that to a fault at times in the game. His one interception that was his fault was him holding onto the ball and sitting in that pocket a little bit too long. But it's nice to see him directly address what his issue has been. And there's still the tell with his footwork. That has to get hammered out. The coaches do see that. I guarantee you they see that. The problem is getting that hammered out in real time after the first couple of drives of a game. That is an ongoing habit you have to break, and Reed will have to break that habit. But as far as the passing ability, seeing the field, progressing through his reads, I 100% see that development there. He has the tools. He has the arm talent. He has the running ability, the make you miss ability, which we saw maybe the best it's been all year this game. I mean, he led a comeback, drive, a go-ahead drive with under 2 minutes to go. Too much time left on the clock for this defense. And I saw what I wanted from Reed and this offensive play design, getting players in space, getting receivers involved, getting Bussy involved, and we saw that in the Auburn game as well. And I think we saw that this offense finally kind of settle into Marcel Reed down the stretch. Now versus Texas, he just didn't have enough. We were outmatched in the game, unfortunately. The play calling, kind of went downhill that game. I think the coaches will probably have to self-assess and figure out how they want to get out of holes like that and find productivity when you're outmatched. And obviously running it up the gut 3 times in a row was not the answer versus Texas. We'll all question that going forward. The coaches will question that forward. Elko questions that going forward. You got to figure that selection and that game management stuff out. But as far as play design, personnel groupings, I really like where it's trending. And now keep in mind, the big kind of black cloud over the season was we had major quarterback turnover and, I don't know, controversy is the right word, but quarterback issues throughout the year. You started with Connor Wigman in spring, in fall. You build the offense around him. He gets hurt. He regresses. Reed comes in the game. Connor comes back. Then it's Reed's for good. You're restructuring the offense in a year one that just got structured for another guy. And I think we finally saw what it kind of wants to be down the stretch. So I love this offense with its pieces next year. And I love giving Klein an offseason to kind of think about what he wants to do with this after seeing how it kind of looks with Reed as the guy. I think when you add a Casey Concepcion, a Craver, and a Hudson to Noah Thomas and potentially Terry Bussey, potentially Jerome Miles, I think you have a chance to be really successful offensively next year, especially if Reed not only picks up where he left off in the bowl game, which I thought was the best we've seen him all year, but takes even another step through spring and through fall camp. Because the pieces around him, everything's there. And offensive line, man, I thought the offensive line was fine in the game. I thought protection was really good for Reed in the game, really, really good. I thought the blocking was, good enough in the game. Ruben Owens was finding space. Now, he wasn't busting off big runs, but what Ruben Owens did in that game that he didn't do as a freshman was just take what's there. Not kind of pitter-pattering at the line, getting the 3 yards if they're there, getting the 4 yards if they're there, getting the 7 yards if they're there, and not always trying to break it outside or find the big play, taking what's there. And the offensive line was fine in that regard. Not an elite offensive line game. It was pretty damn good. Because E.J. Smith was like averaging 7 yards per carry, and E.J. Smith had a rough year, and even he could run behind that line in this game. So, again, just offensively going forward, figuring out your short yardage go-tos, that is the big red flag of the offense right now. 3rd and 1s, we're passing the ball. We were running the ball before without success in the Texas game. You got to figure out your quick hitters, your go-tos, your guaranteed getters in those short yard situations. But I will add, early in the year, when you were healthy on the offensive line, you had Le'Veon Moss. Through the first 8 games of the year, your success rate on 1 to 2 yard gains for conversions, whether it was a touchdown or a first down on 3rd or 4th down, was 100% per SEC StatCat between Daniels and Moss. So losing your short yardage back obviously makes a difference in short yardage situations, and we just couldn't figure out what we wanted to be. That's why I say the big thing about this offense going forward is kind of figuring out your in-game adjustments, your in-game go-tos, your tweaks, your decision-making in games. Because I think the play designs, the overall scheme, I think that's coming along, and we'll take another step when this receiver room is potentially greatly advanced this next year. So we're sitting feeling pretty good about this offense next year. At least I am. I'd love to get your thoughts on Klein, and we just want that Trey Zune announcement, man. We get that. We're feeling pretty great going forward. So overall, next year, daunting 2025 schedule. You're on the road at Notre Dame in week 3. Then the hits keep coming. You're away from Kyle Field for a month in the middle of that season. You go on the road to Texas to close the year out. Offensively, I think you're as good as you could have possibly felt going into next year personnel-wise. You have your 5 back. You have your running back stable back. You have Reed, who you're clearly building around, and I'm fully confident in him as a piece to build around. Whether I'm fully confident in him as a ready-made product, that remains to be seen. But I am happy to build around the guy, and the staff obviously is too. You got your receiver room 100% figured out. You have tight end room addressed. Thor's back. Donovan Green's back. Can they take the next steps? You have Coyote Armstrong in the mix now. The pieces are all there offensively. You have the unit to be a 30-plus point per game next year easily. It's going to be figuring out your game design, your kind of your game planning, your game adjustments is really it. Your game decision, in-game decision making, because the scripted stuff is awesome. Figure that out. A year in the offseason, a year of the coaches in the lab, that's going to help a lot offensively. Now, back to the negative, the entire defensive side of the ball. Elko's your head coach. Mike Elko, I still believe in Elko. The recruiting is there. I think the culture, from all reports, has taken that step up, and a culture does not equal a record, but it is your foundation. He needs to make the tough decisions defensively. You probably need to add a couple of maybe secondary pieces to push the room and raise the floor, but again, I think the answers for the secondary could lie within. There's just so much young talent in that room. I'm not throwing them out. You just got to figure out that D-line, and you got to figure out your coordinator kind of decision there and where you want to go with that thing. And I think we all know where we want to go with that thing. Let's see what the coaching staff thinks about that. So let's keep updating this defense as things go along. There are going to be, I would be surprised if there's not at least 5 more additions defensively in that front 7 going forward. You could probably add 1 linebacker. You can add up to 5, 7 defensive linemen right now if you want strong side D ends and D tackles to build that rotation. Then schematically, just getting the most out of your players. Year of Tommy Moffitt, that stuff could be needed. So surprising kind of flip going into the year, a little bit of question marks surrounding the offensive line. Now we're feeling good about that thing. I felt good about the defense going into the year. That's flipped now. We shall see where things go. All right, guys, not a lot of notes. This is just me speaking my mind. If you disagree, let me know. If you agree, let me know. Give me your thoughts. Thanks for being here, guys. I'll see you soon. Gig 'em.